I'm Francis.
I'm Max.
I'm Sam.
We are Fjorge. So, Fjorge is a advertise. Fjorge is a company based out in Minnesota that works with advertising agencies, and the advertising agencies work with the creative parts, while the company does the technical aspect of things. And it's a small company with 30 something people, but it's continuing to grow. So the problem that our sponsor came up with for us was a thermometer report tracks the that tracks projects for months, and it also requires manual updates, as well as being able to pull data directly from the database to generate the thermometer report. And down the line, we also got like another request to see if any of the projects went off track and all. So our solution was to have the thermometer report be like auto generated, as so we're also trying to pull like the data directly from the database, and also save like unnecessary time and effort in trying to do so manually, and also make the like all the projects that aren't easily tracked, like finding those projects out and their status and the details about those off track projects. So we created a schedule that that works for each of us as well as our sponsor. Like we met with our sponsor on Monday, 1:30 p.m. As well as we each individual, like we also created like group meeting times for us to work on the projects and like other aspects that we needed. And we worked on Tuesdays and Thursdays, like after classes and all, as well as anytime we had like either an emergency or like we had to meet up, we just like texted each other and just try and connect and meet up.
So the thermometer report was the main objective that our sponsor Tim gave us for the semester. As Francis mentioned, it was previously going to be a manual effort. It was just a shared Google Sheets document where you'd have to manually update any projects that were in there, as well as continuously update as you made progress while working on your project there. So we generated the thermometer report, which also, as Francis said, is going to query the database. It ended up being a rather large query, as we had multiple different fields to pull from in the database. Some more on our status. We did get the thermometer report. It tracks the total number of hours of the project for each month. You should be able to go and view projects in previous months as well. You can navigate. There are two little arrow buttons that I'll show later that navigate to previous months, and you can go ahead months as well. There's also going to be the second report that we started working on later. That would be the off-track maintenance project that tracks projects that get off schedule and helps make sure that they can either be put back on track, or if our sponsor Tim or other Fjorge managers decide that those projects are not worthwhile to work on, they can just be scrapped altogether if it's not worth the extra time on those. So for generating the thermometer report, this is essentially how we get the values for the build or actually just the build hours. It takes some items from the harvest projects, the Fjorge Grand Central database that we're pulling from that Tim put together, keeps track of items from their harvest page. So we obtain the budget and the hourly rate from the harvest entry for a particular project, and then multiply those together, as well as the sum of all the invoiced percentages for milestones. The project milestones are essentially just dates where it's anticipated that there will be a milestone met for the project, and then there's also an invoice that's sent out at each of those milestones obtained. And then it's also divided by 90, which is what our sponsor Tim uses essentially to convert that value that they get into more or less what the hourly commitment would be for that project. Shows an example. There's one for one of the Fjorge projects from January of 2019 for Alaska onboarding. It takes the rough budget, which in harvest was 31, multiplies it by the hourly rate of 120, and then the sum of all the project milestones, the sum of the invoice percentages of all the project milestones in that month of January, and then divides that by 90, and it comes out to 21 2/3, which rounds up to the 21 hours that shows in the thermometer. As shown here, this is how the thermometer originally was. This is the Google Sheets document that is being used currently by Fjorge. So of course it's going to have to be manually updated whenever you make changes. This is a screenshot of the thermometer as we've made it, as it queries the database. It's a little bit small, but the months viewed on the far right is just a bit of a bug. We had to add that in order to get the month selection in the upper left-hand corner to actually function properly. Months viewed doesn't have to be displayed. We should be able to remove the months viewed at least from display easily, but that was the only way at this point that we were able to figure out how to get the months to change. And Sam, if you want to take over the one.
So then for the secondary objective that we're working on is the off-track maintenance projects report, and that essentially will track any time that a project is not on the scheduled, if it's not meeting the goals that it needs to. So if it's behind schedule, or if it hasn't even been started on entirely, you can go in and look and see, give it a notification of the status of it, and then the company can decide what they want to do with the project at that point. Sometimes the projects just weren't updated properly, and so they'll go to like the team management of the project and just check to see what the status is of the project. Otherwise, they can reassess the project and see if they want to keep working on it, or just schedule a new goal for it and push the goal back later, or they can scrap it altogether. So it looks at the current month of all the projects and the goals for that month, as well as the previous 3 months, just to keep tabs on all the projects. And then each code has an A or an M in it, so what the report will do, it takes any code that starts with an A or an M, it'll basically find those projects and take a look at it. Some of the challenges that we ran into for reports is one issue we had was getting the HTML to work. So we got all the code in for the queries and all the coding in, but then when we were trying to run it, there's no link to click on the report that we had made, so we had to go in and fix the HTML issues that we were having with it.
Another thing I want to throw in with the challenges was it's been the first time for pretty much all of us using Link. Link is the main way that Tim had us query the database. None of us had used it before. Tim himself didn't seem, I don't think he had used it too much before. So we definitely had to learn a lot about Link in order to get the reports, and that's part of why the thermometer report ended up being so difficult to get done. The SQL syntax for the report is relatively easy and makes sense, but in order to get it translated into the C# code and the Link format, that took a lot more time and effort to figure out how to get to work properly.
Also, some of the technologies that we were brand new to as well is using Microsoft Database Manager was something we never used before, so there's a lot of new things with that we had to figure out and learn about. And then there's also a lot of our first time using virtual machines to do all like our work on, so we had some issues getting logged into virtual machines a lot of times, so learning new things about that as well.
So for the next steps regarding the thermometer report, one of the areas the next students that are fortunate enough to work on these or even take a look at these projects would be to work on the total for the goal. And also regarding the off-track projects, like we've said, our sponsor could decide if any of the projects listed as off-track is still deemed valuable, or if they choose to not work on it at all and just scrap it all together.
Any questions?
Want to back up one slide and talk about what you have on the bottom of the slide?
So the bottom of this slide is the goal for the amount of hours that they need to complete each month, and then it's put into a visual graph on the side there. And essentially, the whole point of the thermometer report is to, if the company meets their goals at the end of each month, they'll have kind of like a little fun event that they will throw for the company. So if they're on track and they meet their goals, they'll have that event, and then it tracks by like each month, so you can kind of go back and see the thermometer report for each month.
Are these things to be done in the next step? Is that what you're...
Yeah, we haven't been able to get the that total part into the thermometer report.
Any other questions?
So what kind of data are you actually working with? Is it JSON data? How are you?
It is a Microsoft SQL database. The database essentially pulls data from, I think it pulls some from Google Sheets. It pulls some from the company's Harvest page. As I mentioned, like it creates an entry there for like the Harvest projects. It tracks all the hours and the budget, the hourly rate, everything from Harvest. It also has some entries for their QuickBooks data. I can't remember if there's one other one, but essentially it brings all that together in a SQL database, and then we just ended up using that queried through the various fields we needed in there.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.